Let's try and get to the bottom of that with our friend Brian Windhorst, our NBA insider, who joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Windy, what? I don't even know what to ask you at this point, so go ahead and just tell us things. What the hell happened last night, and what does it all mean?
Well, everybody's got blood on their hands on this one because Charles Oakley, obviously you can't put your hands on somebody. I think that's pretty clear in society, and there's evidence that he did. And no matter what led up to it, you can't put your hands on security guards like that. And so he obviously has his own problems, but it does seem like the Knicks basically tried to get him to leave, and that's what got him upset. And, if he gets into the game and buys a ticket, as far as I know, the man is not banned from the building. Whether he bought the ticket or was given the ticket or whatever, he has the right to come, and he also has the right, if he wants, to heckle the owner like anybody else who comes to a Knicks game. And Jim Dolan has sat in those seats for years, and he's been heckled in those seats for years. And, the sad thing about this, guys, is the circumstances are different. But every Knicks season, it feels like, comes down to a circus like this. It just seems like it happens year after year after year. As a Browns fan, it reminds me of the Browns. Like week 7 every year, you're on your third quarterback, and you're like, well, it's another Browns circus. And that's what it feels like with the Knicks. This is another lost season. Nobody is sure about the present. Nobody is sure about the future, and we could have had the same conversation at any time, mostly over the last 3 years.
The one thing that is a little different this year is there is a time frame coming up here in an X amount of days that could change this franchise to possibly start in a new direction, whether that's going to make the direction any better or not, and could change the path for another team, and that's Carmelo Anthony. Any more on if we think he is going to be traded by the deadline?
No, I highly doubt it. You always got to be careful in the NBA because things change very, very fast. But I don't see a scenario that exists where they can feasibly make a trade for him. And what's ridiculous about this is that they knew that. When you are dealing in a closed negotiation where you have no maneuverability in talks because of the no-trade clause, the chances of them making a trade mid-season were very, very slim. And yet it was the Knicks and Phil Jackson that initiated this process. They were the ones that opened this Pandora's box that caused all these problems to exist. And, maybe Phil Jackson feels like he's playing some sort of long game here, and he's trying to alienate Carmelo and make him as unhappy so much that he'll consider just waiving the no-trade clause outright so that they can actually have an open negotiation. Maybe that's what his game is, but I can tell you, that doesn't seem like it's going to happen. And right now, if the Knicks made a trade, it would be a leveraged trade that would probably be so painful in the both short-term and long-term that it would make no sense. And so I would say everybody better get used to Carmelo being there. And it's obviously going to be very awkward because the Knicks have made this so uncomfortable.
What was the reaction? Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. What was the reaction around the league to Phil Jackson's tweet of the other day? I had my say, Mike had his, and certainly reporters did, but you talk to people inside the league all the time. What reaction did you hear to that?
They think he's out of his mind. The text started coming in from NBA executives and coaches to me, and they're saying, what the hell is he doing? They honestly think he's out of his mind. And what's so crazy about this is all created by him. I mean, it's very difficult, guys. You know this. It's very difficult to win in the NBA. Like 7,000 things got to line up in your way, for it to work. It's so hard to get and keep a star player. It's like there are two types of franchises: franchises that have stars and franchises that are trying to get stars. And so all these guys who work in the league understand this struggle. And then they look at the Knicks and they see how they continue to take a sledgehammer and swing it against their feet. And they wonder what the hell is going on there. And again, Phil put himself in this situation by, one, agreeing to the no-trade clause when he signed a few years ago. There was no mandate that they had to do that. That was in a negotiation. They gave that to him. That was gigantic mistake number one. Then gigantic mistake number two, last summer when they could have rebuilt around Porzingis, they rebuilt around Carmelo. So at least 6 months ago, they were under the full belief that this team could be good with Carmelo going forward, because otherwise they wouldn't have signed guys in their late 20s or early 30s to gigantic contracts. Now they come in the middle of this season, and they obviously don't want to go with those guys. They want to build young, which is a major tactical error. But then they throw roadblocks down in front of them by publicly attacking their best player and harming the trade position. Maybe Phil ends up getting bailed out by this because maybe there's an injury out there or some team gets desperate and calls the Knicks. But it's going to take a miracle upon miracle upon miracle for him to get out of this situation. And they were the ones that put themselves in this corner.
And certainly we want to get on to basketball of relevant teams. But as far as Phil, he can opt out after this year. Is there any chance he opts out and is done and leaves $24 million on the table?
Guys, it's a two-way deal. Both sides have the opt-out. Both the Knicks and Phil have the opt-out. It's not just up to him. And secondly, something else has happened. Phil has ruined his chance to get another job, probably with the Lakers, because his relationship with Jeannie Buss ended. Okay, that's the job he really wanted, to run the Lakers. Whatever happened with him and Jeannie and caused the end of their relationship, the Lakers are ready to make a change. There's going to be somebody new running them next year, and it's not going to be Phil Jackson. He's botched two jobs. As great of a coach as he was, Hall of Fame and all those rings, and you take your hat off and say the man was a genius in motivating players and getting the best out of a couple of the greatest players of all time. His botchery of running teams is now headed towards legendary status.
Wow, Mike Brian Windhorst is with us. It's very hard to disagree with that. Even those of us who have been fans of his can't disagree with that. One final thought on the two-way nature of the option. There are those who look at this and say that Phil Jackson is sort of serving now as a human shield for the owner, Jim Dolan, that so long as he's in place, everyone is aiming all of the slings and arrows at Phil, I guess, except for Charles Oakley, at Phil. And that is sort of a $12 million force field that the owner can place in front of him. There would be no other justification, if you are the owner, for not essentially firing him after this coming season. What do you think will happen there, Windy?
Well, there's something to be said for the value of continuity within franchises. One of the things, everybody in the NBA tries to mimic the Spurs. Like every other year, some team tries to become the Spurs, but people don't realize that the Spurs, their greatest asset is their continuity. You look at the Spurs and the Heat, two of the most successful franchises in all of sports. Their continuity from top down is valued. So I'm not one of these people that advocates firing the GM or firing the coach at the first sign of trouble. So if they decide to keep Phil in the job, there are some merits to not ripping it up. But I'm looking for a reason to keep Phil Jackson, and the reasons has got to be more than he drafted Porzingis, and I don't see the other reason right now. And so, regardless of anything that's happened or any tweet or any interview he's given or whatever, I'm just evaluating him on his personnel decisions, and his personnel decisions have been poor. And anybody in his situation would be facing questions about their job.
Moving on, the Cavaliers are in Oklahoma City tonight. It's their fourth road game since February 4th. Word is that the Big Three may be sitting for this game. If, in fact, that does happen, the deliciousness of that is to think, are they doing that to stick it to one Charles Barkley and TNT, since it's a TNT game? Can we all be that petty and think that might be one of the reasons?
No, that would be a fun storyline, but the Cavs played one of the best games of the season on Monday night in Washington, and it was on TNT. So I don't think it has anything to do with that. I'm in Oklahoma City for this game right now, and obviously it's a huge letdown because the Cavs essentially are going to forfeit this game. J.R. Smith and Iman Shumpert are hurt, so that means they're going to have 5 players out, and they only have 14 players. That means it's an 8-man team, and it's going to be a massacre. The thing about it is, guys, is I think it's the correct decision to give LeBron James games off. They continue to play him heavy minutes. He's averaging almost 40 minutes a game over his last 9 games. the Cavs have been playing great. While all this talk about Melo and all this other stuff has been going around, meanwhile, they've rediscovered their game. They've been arguably they've definitely been the best team in the East. They just ended the Warriors' home streak, and they just beat the Pacers last night, ending their 7-game win streak. They're playing awesome. But I think the correct decision is to rest LeBron. He's played way too many minutes. The problem is you give all three players off, and now you're doing something that sort of hurts the fans. Now, when you ask the Cavs about this, they have a very reasonable answer. They say, well, why would we stagger a couple of games off and lower our chances to win maybe 2 games? Why not just give all 3 of them off and just basically give up 1 game instead of play 2 half speed? And that is a great comeback, and I can't argue with it. But it just points to the issue the NBA has with the way the schedule is working and why they're extending the season next year. This is the Cavs' 4th game in 6 nights, all on the road. Overtime game on Monday. They haven't been able to practice. They had all of this travel. I don't blame them at all for taking that position. And I also am going to look at the fans tonight who bought tickets probably for very expensive on the secondary market. A lot of these teams charge extra money when the Cavs come in and play. And this is the second time this year where these 3 guys are basically forfeiting a road game. I don't blame the fans. We got a problem here. I got the team that I'm understanding. I got the fans that I'm understanding. It's on Adam Silver to fix this issue, and they didn't really do much in the CBA to do it, other than extending the season a little bit. They've got to figure out a way to stop disrespecting the fans while also protecting the players, and I don't have the answer for it.
Brian Windhorst on the Shell Pennzoil Performance